The iPhone 15 Pro Max is making me leave my professional camera setup at home more often than I'd like to admit. This phone has taken mobile photography to a whole other level, allowing you to capture incredible images if done correctly. So today I'm going to walk you through the top 5 tips and tricks to get you started taking images on your phone that you are proud of. All right, tip number 1 is to make sure you're only using the 3 lenses you've got on the back of your phone. This is going to make sure that you are not digitally zooming at all and you're not affecting image quality whatsoever. See, the thing is, these 3 lenses on the back are all optical zooms. We've got the 0.5 times, the 1x, and the 5x. If you're shooting on the 15 Pro, you'll have the 3x instead of the 5x. Now, these lenses allow us to shoot directly through these lenses, but for example, if we were to open up the camera app and slide over to maybe 3.2x, there's no 3.2x lens. All that's doing is zooming in on the 1 times lens, and it's just cropping our image. This is not ideal. Let's say you really like that 3.2x look. You're best off taking the photo at 1 times and then digitally cropping afterwards. That way you get all the freedom and flexibility that you would from a 1 times photo. And maybe if you want a little bit more in the crop, you didn't take it at 3.2x, so you're already in front there, but you're also making sure that you are taking the best quality image to be able to crop from, instead of just doing it through the camera app, baking in that crop, and then being done with it. So if we start things out by just making sure you are only using 1 of these 3 lenses, you're already going to be miles in front. Don't zoom to 1.1 times. Don't zoom to 4.2 times. Just use the lenses, the preset little focal lengths that you can choose when you're in the camera app. Just stick to those. Next up, make sure you shoot in RAW. This is a very crucial one. Not only are you going to be making sure that you're capturing as much data and as much of the image as you possibly can and getting a full sensor readout when you do capture the shot, but you also get the full flexibility of editing a RAW photo. I'm going to assume if you're watching this video, chances are you're going to be wanting to edit your photos. If you want to be taking great professional looking photos on your phone, you'll know, deep down, a part of you will know that you'll have to edit these photos to make them look just that much better. If you want to see a handful of before and afters, I'll put them on screen now. These are photos that I've taken over the last 4 or 5 months since having this phone, since it was released, and I've been loving shooting with this phone. Also, if you like any of the edits, these were all edited with my iPhone preset collection that you can go and download right now in the description below. If you want to check that out, do yourself a favor and make iPhone photo editing a complete breeze. These presets were designed to work with iPhone RAW photos, so go do yourself a favor. Okay, next up, a little bit of a bonus tip actually is make sure you wipe down the back of your camera lens. The amount of times I've pulled my phone out of my pocket, I open up the camera app and it's all looking hazy and whatnot. Just make sure you wipe this down. The lenses on the back are quite big and bulky, so therefore they definitely attract a lot of fingerprints. So what I do most of the time is I just use my shirt, make sure they're wiped down, and then happy days, go out and take some bangers. Okay, tip number 3.5, if you will. Let's count that last one as a bonus tip. Tip number 3 is if you want the best looking photos, make sure you're shooting with the 1 times lens. Now, this isn't to add on from our first tip, but hear me out. See, the thing is, even though you've got 3 lenses, they were not created equally. We've got the 0.5 times, which really struggles in low light and definitely doesn't have the widest aperture, meaning that the background blur created from this lens is almost non-existent. And then we've got the 5 times lens on here, which is also a great lens, but once again, it really struggles in low light and doesn't have a wide aperture. There are moments and times where you'll want to use the 0.5 or the 5 times lens, but if you want the absolute best looking photos, make sure you use the 1 times lens. Not only does the 1 times lens have the biggest aperture, giving you as much natural background blur as possible, but it also lets in as much light, therefore it performs so much better in low light, and it kind of removes all the horrible noisy grain that you would otherwise get if you were using the 0.5 or the 5 times lens in a darker environment. Now sure, you're not getting a full frame sensor on here, so the noise performance isn't amazing, but shooting with the 1 times lens is going to make sure that you're taking the best possible photos, especially in low light, and getting the best background blur as well, which is always a nice bonus when you're shooting on your phone. All right, tip number 4. This one is important. This is turning on the grid and the level. This is going to help you out so much, especially when you're composing your shots. I'll put a little screen recording on screen now just to show you how this works. So not only do you get the 3x3 grid to help you keep things, composed well, centered, make sure things look nice and lines are lining up, but when you pair this up with the level, all of a sudden you go from taking photos a little bit off to making sure your horizons are nice and straight, and things just look so much better. I'm not sure why it took so long for Apple to put a level in their camera app, but my goodness, am I thankful they've finally done it. It works really well and means I don't have to straighten up my image when I'm editing it in Lightroom or in the camera app, meaning I don't have to crop in that slight amount and lose a little bit of detail. All right, last but not least, tip number 5. This is to shoot underexposed, ever so slightly, not too much, but just a little underexposed. And here's why. First things first, you wanna make sure when you're taking photos, your highlights aren't blown out. They are much harder to recover than shadows are. Let's say, for example, I took a photo in a dimly lit environment. It's gonna be easier to boost those shadows up versus if I took a photo in a really bright environment, then trying to pull those highlights back down. So that's the first reason it's good to underexpose, but the next one is it adds a nice amount of contrast in your shot. I'm not sure why or exactly how this works, but just making those shadows a little darker, especially when you pull it over into Lightroom and you're editing with some of those tasty Lightroom presets for iPhone, the contrast just gets so much nicer when the image was underexposed when you shot it. So all you've got to do is simply tap on your screen, drag that sun down a little bit. This is the easy way to do it. And then you are ready to rock and roll. And that's pretty much it, guys. That wraps up the 5 tips, or the 5.5 if we will, to shoot great professional looking photos on your iPhone. If you want a full breakdown of the best settings to use on your iPhone 15 Pro Max to take the best photos possible or the best video possible, I've actually got a video on both of those. They're separate videos, but they'll be on a card somewhere on the screen now. So if you want to go check those out, do yourself a favor and make sure you're shooting the best iPhone photos possible or the best video possible with the best settings. Anyway, guys, that's going to wrap up today's video. I hope you learned something. If you're new around here, a subscribe would mean the world, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.